The release of Stalker 2 is just around the corner, so I figured it would be great to remind players about the various factions we've seen in previous franchise iterations. This video is suitable for both rookies and veterans of the series, as it will also cover factions cut from the game and added in Stalker Anomaly. All of the following footage was made on my custom modded version of Stalker Gamma. The most popular faction has to be the Free Stalkers. The members of this faction can't be classified into one category, as it encompasses every person who illegally got in the zone. Of course, a good portion of Free Stalkers end up joining other factions due to their goals and beliefs. Still, the ones who stay are usually simple civilians who came in the zone to make money, cure an illness, access the Wish Granter, or simply find the meaning of life through their journey in the zone. Since many Free Stalkers are rookies who came in search for riches and fame, they often have low quality equipment and rather poor combat skills, which makes them an easy target for organized groups of mercenaries, soldiers, and even sometimes bandits. Free Stalkers are allied with factions composed of ex-Stalkers like Clear Sky, Freedom, and Duty. In addition, Ecologists often cooperate with Stalkers, knowing they will be eager to complete their tasks for some great equipment they require. Of course, not all Free Stalkers are rookies. This stereotype was popularized by the Rookie Village in Cordon, which serves as a base for newcomers. In reality, Stalkers can be found anywhere, from the calming and secured hangars of Rostov to the deadly and terrifying streets of Pripyat. One of these Stalkers is Strelok, a legendary figure who managed to single-handedly destroy the sea consciousness and uncover the secrets of the zone. Let me know if you want to hear the full story of his adventures, as it's truly something out of this world. The Free Stalkers don't have an official leader due to them being, well, free, but it's pretty much unanimously agreed that Sidorevich is their leader. He is another significant figure in the zone's history, being the only truly reliable trader with connections to the outside world. Another faction that is rather similar to the Free Stalkers is Clear Sky. Mostly composed of rookie Stalkers, members of Clear Sky are the only people who simply want to study the zone. And not like Ecologists who do it for potential weapons that then can be sold to the highest bidder, but Clear Sky studies the zone as a beautiful phenomenon that is simply interesting and must be kept in balance to not disrupt its natural state. Clear Sky controls the entire region of the swamps, thanks to their base being located in the southern corner of the marsh. Rare members of this faction can be found in Garbage and Rostok. The northern regions of the zone appear to be too dangerous for them, although this didn't stop Clear Sky from pushing to the center of the zone through the abandoned hospital. But in the end, the operation failed. Despite not going too far to the north of the zone, Clear Sky members have rather strong NATO equipment and are quite skilled when it comes to combat. The founders of Clear Sky are Lebedev, Suslov, and Kalancha, extremely important figures in the story of Stalker, as they were the members of the common consciousness, but decided to abandon their comrades due to having different views regarding the project. Clear Sky is allied to the same factions as the Free Stalkers, with the added bonus of being tolerated by mercenaries, which unlocks great opportunities regarding the traversal of certain areas of the zone. The main enemies of Clear Sky are Bandits, more precisely Renegades, and special units of Bandits that are very prominent in the swamps. You can even aid Clear Sky in their war against the Renegades to help the faction take over the swamps entirely. Now that we have started talking about Renegades, let's discuss the faction from which they originated, Bandits. As the name suggests, this faction is composed primarily of previous Russian and Ukrainian convicts, who ventured in the zone to continue their illegal line of work. The most notable feature of the Bandits is their lexicon, as it almost entirely consists of various vulgar slang words, often used in jails. The most popular phrase of the Bandits everyone has heard at least once is "Ano, chiki-briki в дамке!" There are many theories as to what this means, but no direct answer, although it can be used both casually as okay or alright, but also during combat as in order to move up. What's interesting is that this phrase comes from chess, the favorite way Russian inmates pass their time in jail. The Bandits appear to have been around as long as the zone existed, and during that time their leader, Yoga, was very brutal, killing his men like it was nothing. So eventually the bandits rebelled and killed their boss. With the death of Yoga, the bandits lost the territories they controlled, most notably Garbage, which they desperately tried to get back under their control. After the execution, various bandit groups started to form with their own leaders, located in different parts of the zone. These small groups are mostly located in the northern regions of the zone, and are logically composed of very few members, as only the most skilled adventurers can get to Zaton's Dried Lakes or the ravaged factory of Jupiter. The Dark Valley contains the biggest bandit base, previously controlled by Borov before Sterlok murdered him to enter the nearby laboratory. Now the area belongs to Sultan, who acts as a leader of the faction. Depending on where you look, the bandits can have completely different equipment, from simple toss shotguns and a cloth mask up to stolen exoskeletons. Although the troops under Sultan's control, the ones who wander around Cordon, the Dark Valley and Truck Cemetery, have very poor equipment, somehow even worse than the ones of the Free Stalkers. Bandits have good relations with Freedomers and Mercs. They are also known to cooperate with Renegades, as they're basically the same faction. Renegades are rather similar to the Free Stalkers, as they also have no definite leader and act on their own. Although, unlike Stalkers, they are entirely composed of bandits who decided to venture through the zone without any higher figure giving them orders. The Renegades are almost entirely exclusive to the swamps and the Truck Cemetery. Due to their enormous presence in these areas, they're the main enemies of Clear Sky. While not having any leader and a definite base, Renegades managed to capture one of the outposts found in the Truck Cemetery. As for everything else, language, equipment and goals, they are the exact same as for bandits. Now let's move from treacherous and thievish bandits to noble and righteous dutiers. Duty is mainly composed of old veterans of the Afghan War. Scarred and broken by the horrors of war, they cannot return to regular peaceful life. They need to keep on fighting for something greater, and keep serving their country, as it is the only thing that makes them feel alive. Because of this, dutiers always need to report for, well, duty and are prohibited from using any drugs. Due to their similarities and that most of duty members are ex-soldiers, they have great relations with the Ukrainian Spetsnaz guarding the zone. Duty soldiers believe that the zone must be protected from regular civilians and cleansed from all its filth. Those who act as a threat for Stalkers or exploit the zone for personal gain count as enemies of duty. This not only includes various mutants and bandits, but also mercenaries and freedomers. They regularly offer various contracts for eliminating members of these factions to Stalkers who happen to wander in their base, Rostok. Protected with numerous duty outposts, Rostok is the only real safe place of the zone, where adventurers can take a breather and pretend life is normal for a little while. The many hangars have been refurbished and became iconic places in the zone. The 100 Rats bar that always appears to have wanderers stopping by, filled with old music from the USSR playing over the radio, sometimes being overlapped with duty's propaganda. The arena, which shows gruesome fighting between humans and mutants alike, serving as a business for those confident and skilled enough. And of course, the main location of Rostok, the only reason it still stands, is the duty base, housing the leader of duty, Krylov. Despite what you might think, duty members quite hate General Krylov. That's because he's the main reason the golden age of duty ended. Back when the founder of duty, Tachenko, was still in charge, they were a potent faction. With easy access to powerful military equipment, duty controlled enormous territories and was winning the war against freedomers. But then one day Tachenko and his closest allies got in a spatial bubble anomaly. It is one of the most terrifying and rarest anomalies in the zone. If you want me to make a guide on all anomalies, then make sure to let me know in the comments. The spatial bubble is a teleporter anomaly, but instead of transporting you to a different part of the zone, it sends you into a pocket dimension. It represents a dark and empty forest that appears to be endless. Although the most terrifying part is that this dimension doesn't contain anything. There are no humans, mutants, buildings, or just about any resources. Eventually, Stalkers who find themselves inside the spatial bubble will start to run out of resources due to wandering around the endless forest trying to find an exit. Although the majority of people who enter this anomaly don't die from dehydration or famine, but end up going insane from the eternal solitude and die by shooting themselves. This is precisely what happened to Tachenko. After his death, General Krylov decided to make peace with Freedomers. Of course, nowadays there are still enemies, but a few conferences have been made between them to appease the war. Numerous duty soldiers didn't like this new policy, most notably Colonel Skull, who decided to leave the faction with a group of expert dutiers, leading to a major decrease in duty's power. Currently, the only territories that duty occupies are Rostok and some outposts on Garbage. Despite duty losing many of its members, they are still a rather strong faction on the same level as the army. Something that cannot be said about their enemies, the Freedomers. Freedom is an anarchist faction whose ideology stems from the fact that the zone is a natural phenomenon and, while being dangerous, should be accessible for anyone in the world. Unlike duty, Freedomers don't follow any strict rules. They're allowed to smoke, drink and use drugs whenever they like. Despite having rather weak equipment, when compared to dutiers, they control a much greater portion of the map. The Yanov station in Jupiter and the entirety of the army warehouses belong to Freedom. This unlocks more tactical positions to attack their enemies. We already discussed their reputation with duty, but we haven't talked about the military. Freedom is known to make various terrorist attacks against the Ukrainian army. Even their base once belonged to the military that was seized by Freedom during an mission. Because of their highly illegal actions and beliefs, Freedomers are allied with Bandits and Mercs, which makes their base somewhat dangerous for free Stalkers. And yes, just like duty, Freedom is also blasting its propaganda over the radio in hopes of gaining new people to help them fight the Monolith. I haven't talked about this faction as it can be found up north, but for now know that this faction is extremely volatile and Freedom took the task to protect the barrier in the army warehouses, as it is the only blockade stopping the Monolith from taking over the zone. Freedom's history is rather extensive, but I'll try to summarize what happened. The founders of Freedom were 4 Stalkers by the name of Chekhov, Lukash, Lignov and Loki. Chekhov became the first leader of Freedom, although during an expedition to the north of the zone, while pushing through the Brain Scorcher, his group suffered heavy losses, leaving him the sole survivor to reach Pripyat, where he died. In his place came Miklucha. While there isn't much info about him, what we know is that he also managed to get past the Brain Scorcher, although his operation was much more successful than Chekhov's, and he even managed to survive several weeks in Pripyat. The current leader of Freedom is Lukash, who stopped the war with duty and makes sure to protect the barrier from the Monolithian forces. Another faction whose goal is to protect the zone is the military. Logically, this faction consists of Ukrainian Spetsnaz. Just like duty, their equipment is great, featuring many powerful exoskeletons and heavy weapons. In addition to equipment, the military has access to many powerful vehicles like APCs and various helicopters. Most of this equipment is provided by Russia in exchange for valuable information about artifacts and the origins of the zone. The military has various outposts located all throughout the perimeter. The most popular one is in Cordon. Every Stalker has to sneak through this block post to get to the zone. Thankfully, the majority of soldiers can be bribed to enter without any repercussions. The main mission of the Ukrainian armed forces was at first to deliver an atomic bomb in the center of the zone to destroy it. But after the operation failed, it was decided to secure the place and study its anomalous properties in more detail. As time went by, the soldiers started to lose more and more ground in the zone. During an mission, an outpost near the Chernobyl NPP was completely destroyed, and then, as explained before, Freedom seized the base in the army warehouses, leaving the military with only a portion of Agroprom still under their control. Unlike other factions, the leader of the military is the government, but there are some important figures tied to the military faction. For example, we have General Kuznetsov found at the base in Agroprom. Another prominent figure is Major Degtyaryov, who was tasked with investigating the various destroyed helicopters after the failure of Operation Fairway, a mission aimed to take control of Pripyat. As previously mentioned, Captain Tachenko once worked for the military before forming the Duty faction. Thanks to their past and overall similarities, Duty and military are great allies. In addition, the army also makes sure to protect various scientists working in the zone. These scientists are part of the Ecologists faction, one of the most important groups in the zone. As their name suggests, the Ecologists are various scientists and researchers who study the anomalies and mutants of the zone. Although, as I already mentioned, they work for the government, gathering information about potential discoveries that then can be used for profit. Despite Ecologists being registered figures in the exclusion zone, they like to cooperate with Stalkers from all sorts of factions, because most of the time they complete the job much better than the military. This openness to cooperation paired with a great pay makes Ecologists allied with every faction, except Bandits and Renegades. Ecologists heavily rely on militarized factions like Duty to do their field work, as their combat skills and equipment aren't fitted for free exploration without any escort squad. Most of the time you will see scientists working in anomalies. Thanks to their protective suits, they can stay within these anomalous fields for enough time to take measures. Another common practice of the Ecologists is taking samples from killed mutants to study them in the lab. Most often they give you tasks for delivering specific body parts of the zone's fauna. The Ecologist base can be found in the dried lake of Yantar, in a secured bunker lab. These mobile laboratories are said to be dropped from the sky by helicopters, allowing an immediate secured location for the scientists to work at. Many Stalkers consider Professor Zakharov to be the leader of the faction, as he is the most experienced ecologist who conducted many experiments during his long stay in the zone. He is also the one who gave Strelok the Psy helmet, allowing him to disable the Brain Scorcher and the Miracle Machine. This event highly benefited another faction of the zone called the Mercenaries. The Mercenaries are a very discreet faction. They are mainly composed of private military contractors from the USA and other NATO countries. This affiliation gives mercenaries access to great equipment, making them absolute beasts in combat. The Mercs are known to take their job very seriously and with extreme professionalism. Most known for their amazing combat skills and careful planning, which guarantees the completion of a contract. It is still not known who the contractors of the Mercs are, as this information is top secret. But what we do know is that the tasks they are given aren't limited to simple head bounties, but also various infiltrations, theft, destructions, and other highly difficult operations mercenaries complete with ease. Thanks to their skills, the mercenaries ask for enormous amounts of money for completing certain tasks. The Mercs' professionalism and discipline is mostly due to their code. Logically, regular stalkers like us don't have access to this code, but the most prominent and important rule the mercenaries follow is any contract must be executed. Because of this rule, while being allied to other profiteers of the zone like Freedom and Bandits, they wouldn't hesitate getting a contract on one of their heads. Mercenaries have various outposts scattered around the zone, like the one in Limansk or the construction site in the Wild Territory, but their main base can be found in the Dead City's sports hall. While being extremely elusive and hard to find, the commander of the mercenaries is Dushman. The fact that his name was commonly used by Soviets to describe an insurgent already gives you an idea of his behavior. Dushman doesn't follow any ethics or rules, except the ones created by the mercenaries. Although this description is applicable for every member of the mercenary faction. Little else is known about Dushman or his way of managing the mercenaries. What's certain is that due to their great equipment and exemplary combat skills, the mercenaries are rather dangerous enemies. Although they are far from being the most powerful faction in the zone, this title is usually awarded to the Monolith, an extremely volatile group having control over the entire city of Pripyat and the CNPP. The faction is more similar to a religious cult, with all of its members worshipping the Monolith. Monolithians dedicate prayers to the Wish Granter, saying that they live in his divine light, follow his all-knowing voice, and are ready to die for him. The Monolith itself is nothing but an illusion, made by members of the common consciousness as a last resort to make sure no one uncovers the truth. In reality, the wishes the Monolith grants are nothing but hallucinations before the person dies from the enormous amounts of radiation. The sea consciousness also created the Monolith to stop people from wandering too far into the zone. You see, the Brain Scorcher can either destroy the minds of those who walk in its range, or alter them so that they become loyal to the Monolith and help defend Pripyat. This partial brainwashing allows for full autonomy of the Monolithian troops, who still act like regular humans, singing songs by the campfires, seeking food and resources, and simply living life, with the added bonus of actively trying to destroy all other factions of the zone. The Monolith controls the biggest area of the zone, and the most important structures, including various secret laboratories, which include the famous Brain Scorcher in Radar, from which Monolith constantly attacks the barrier, trying to take over the army warehouses. Now you're probably wondering, how a faction entirely composed of brainwashed fanatics managed to occupy almost the entirety of the zone's center, and that's because they are being held by the government. The various psi-emitters found in the zone can brainwash people and make them loyal to the Monolith. The range of these emitters is large and goes beyond the exclusion zone. Because of that, multiple generals and high government figures were zombified and now help the Monolith by supplying them with equipment. This grants the Monolith access to both NATO and Warsaw weapons, including heavy weapons like RPGs and grenade launchers. Because of their strength, many Stalkers try to avoid the center of Pripyat, where in the House of Culture named Energetic, the base of the Monolith is located. Thanks to their autonomy, the Sea Consciousness doesn't need to constantly control and give orders to the Monolith. Instead, they assigned Haron to be the leader of the faction and direct the Monolithian troops. After Strelok deactivated the Brain Scorcher and destroyed the Sea Consciousness, many Monolithians became free from the Psi emissions. Others stayed loyal to the Wish Granter and constructed various receivers in Pripyat, made from trash and scrap. These receivers sometimes manage to connect to faraway Psi emitters, who the Monolith considers as divine revelations. While considered as freak by Stalkers, the Monolith is an extremely dangerous faction that occupied a good portion of the zone. They are ready to destroy anyone who ventures too far to the north, although they have one ally. The Sinners are a rather new and recently emerging faction. Sin, similarly to Monolith, is a religious cult, but Sinners believe in the divine essence of the zone that will lead to the redemption of mankind. Sinners don't have great equipment compared to the Monolith, usually wearing simple dark hoods covering their face and body. For this clothing, they were nicknamed Dark Stalkers. Despite their weak armor, the Sinners have great protection that appears to be more similar to a force field that stops bullets from direct contact. The mutated Stalkers are allied with the Monolith and control the same areas as them, often being seen with their squads and outposts. There is next to no information about their leader Chernobyl. A small base has been constructed in the mine barracks of the Red Forest, but the location of Chernobyl is still unknown. The final and most elusive faction is the United Nations International Scientific Group. The goals of the UNISG are unknown, but they appear to be politically motivated in finding out the truth about the zone and its origins. Despite infiltrating the zone via the dark space entrance, they appear to be seen only in the northern areas of the exclusion zone. Due to being UN soldiers, they are allied with the Mercenaries and have the best equipment out of all factions, having access to not only NATO weaponry and exoskeletons, but also experimental weapons and even Nosorogs. The UNISG is constantly on the move, so they don't have a definite base, although they are often seen in multiple buildings on the outskirts of Pripyat. So these were all of the factions in the world of Stalker. There are multiple small ones that no longer exist, so I decided not to mention them as this video is already long enough. Although there's another faction that many people forget about, and these are the zombified Stalkers, although I will talk about them in my next video, in which I'll be explaining all the different mutants that can be found around the zone. Thank you everyone for watching, remember to like and subscribe, and I see you in the next video.